This is Mani here again for another episode of our AI GTM Talks series. This is episode 7. Super excited to be here with Gorish Agarwal of Sybil AI. And again, just to kind of set the stage, we our key learning was that there's a lot of confusion in the market around how AI is coming in and transforming go-to-market at companies. And so there's a lot of confusion, lots of different products, technologies, and tools all across the GTM tech stack. So we thought, why don't we bring some amazing founders here to help us get a deep dive into their product tech solution area. And so we're bringing in founders. They're also bringing in some revenue leaders. So that's kind of the motivation behind this talk series. We've had several founders. We're super excited to now have Gorish and Sybil. Let me just put up this next slide here. And Gorish, welcome.
Thank you, Mani, and great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. And so I know that you're calling Sybil the account executive's dream assistant. So why don't we start? Maybe if you can talk about what do you all do and how the company came about. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we started the company about 4 years ago,
Yeah.
slightly after the COVID pandemic started.
Mhm.
And what we are essentially building is this 10x AI assistant for the sellers, the sales, the account executives themselves. And
Right.
essentially, the problem we are trying to solve is if you think about your sales team, it's and think of an individual seller. Typically, when they think of calls or FaceTime with the customer, in a typical day, they are on FaceTime for 1.5 hours a day. The rest of the day goes into handling back office admin work for those 3 or 4 deals that they went on calls with. It goes into team meetings, it goes into prospecting, finding new deals. And all of this additional work becomes extremely overwhelming for the seller. Where we come in, and what we are essentially trying to do is basically take away and automate the back office admin work so that the reps, first of all, can handle a lot more deals without getting overwhelmed, and they don't have to jump on as many team calls. So essentially, we get into the deal execution cycle, so anywhere from qualification to close, and we help them build collaterals, we help them send follow-ups, we help them update the CRM, schedule meetings, any other kind of internal and external communication. Sybil can actually go in based on the context it has received from the entire conversation with the customer and the internal team. It can actually convert that into a useful first cut outcome, which is typically pretty good. So the reps can simply review it and send it out to whoever is the relevant individual. And the
Got it.
goal is to automate this process so that reps can be on back to calls without having to worry about follow ups, without having to worry about system updates, and a lot of other things that comes with the job today
Yeah.
for
No, that
sellers.
makes a lot of sense. I totally agree with you. I think account execs, have so much on their plate. Um, so why don't we kick it off with, if you could tell us, who are your target customers in terms of
Mhm.
segments, personas, buying groups, buying teams, and even industries and verticals that you're selling into.
Yeah. So we today have about 750 customers.
Mhm.
It's a PLG product, so a huge number of B2B, mid-market, and SMB companies. Typically, the industries that come most to us is people that are selling online and selling software or services. Those are the two biggest verticals.
Mhm.
Uh, the geographies, so we sell into 30 countries today,
Yeah.
which is pretty broad. But um, the the one unique aspect of what we are trying to push for more than a lot of other tools is the value prop is built very heavily for the sellers, the individual contributors themselves. So we have
Mhm.
features that layer up for the managers and the leadership, but the account executive layer is where we focus a lot on because we feel that's the least leveraged domain. And it's also the one which is like the maximum in quantity. So if I can build and make the life of account executives better and get them to sell 300%, that feels like a much bigger market and a target audience than going to the top of the chain right away, at least.
Okay, awesome. So why don't we do this? If you wouldn't mind, just walk folks through like a brief demo of what your
Sure.
product, your tech, what it does, and I think that'll really set the stage for the rest of the conversation. So over to you on that, Gorish.
Sounds perfect. I will share my screen,
Sure.
but essentially, what you will see over here is a few different things through this demo. So one of the ways we operate is we will connect with your video calls, calendar, emails, and CRM, and we take in the data from these disparate sources. We analyze customer conversations and deals, and we provide varying kinds of outputs on that analysis. So let me share my screen. So what you
Sure.
see over here is my
Uh,
own Sybil ecosystem. Sorry, go
yep.
ahead.
No, no. Yes, I can see your screen now. Go ahead.
Okay. So my this is my own Sybil ecosystem. So this is my team's conversation. So
Hmm.
a couple of parts I will skip over quickly for the interest of time, and then some I will go deeper into. So this is, for example, a call which my AE had with a customer. So what Sybil does, first of all, is the recording, the transcript, those are common. We also build out a pretty concise and precise summary. So you can actually figure out what is the outcome of the conversation without having to go into the conversation. And it actually captures what is the buying intent, which means will they move forward in the process itself or not. So buying intent, for example, in this case, appears early stage exploratory with genuine interest. Then you have the next steps, conversation starters, and the list goes on. But one of the most beautiful aspects about Sybil is I don't need to go just into a single call or across a single deal and do this analysis. I can actually run across all my calls and say things like, what are the key learnings from last week's call?
Hmm.
And this goes in, it figures out what is the context of the conversation we are talking about, what last week's call means. It figures out, it pulls in those calls, analyzes those for the question that is being asked. So that could be key learnings, that could be next steps, that could be competition mentions,
Hmm.
um, and other things. And it generates a report with that analysis. So it takes 20 seconds to run because it's doing a multi-layer agentic workflow for
Yeah.
extracting the data, extracting the specific information, and then building out the final report.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
let it.
be, behind the scenes, are you using different kinds of LLMs? I mean, how is this? Just a little bit of
Yeah,
the
so
behind the scenes.
we have five various LLMs ongoing, but
Oh, wow.
our key innovation going on is there is a reasoning system to
Mhm.
understand what the query is. So the
Mhm.
query does not need to be prompt engineered to get a very perfect output. It can be very vague. We have
Mhm.
people trying out like what is Nikki's magic, and it
Okay.
understands that Nikki means an account executive. When we are talking about her magic, it's basically why is she crushing it versus others are not crushing it. So it
Gotcha.
understands, captures the deals for Nikki, captures the deals for other account executives, compares the two, like compares
Mm.
how she handles objection within the deal. So this entire reasoning is going on in the back end to get
Nice.
to this output. So for
Okay.
example, over here, what are the key learnings? Uh, Here are key learnings and development from last week. So, product
Mm.
and pricing strategy, we have sales
Mm.
and partnership, we have product development. These are
Mm.
all the calls that me and my team has taken, and it's
Mm.
figuring out from those calls what have been the key learnings. And
Got
it
it.
actually pulls in the sources from which this information was planned. So you can
Mm.
go into that specific moment of the call and not
Mm.
just remain on this level. I tried out a few more prompts just to show, but they work in essentially the same way. So, for example, one of the things we get, it's a competitive market,
Mm.
as with any GTM tech company. So, I asked, what are the top competitors we run into? How many times? Why
Mm.
do we win or lose against them? Put everything into a table. So, it
Mm.
built me a competitor analysis, and this is based on. actual conversation data with the customer. So Gong, Fathom, Fireflies, these are some of these names you might have heard as well.
Sure.
Uh, how frequently are they mentioned? Why are we winning? Why are we losing? And
Mm,
again, get competitive advantage. I can go deeper into any of these aspects and I can
mm,
say, okay, we have customer feedback. Uh, we have areas for continued focus. Go deeper into what do you mean by that? And then
okay.
we have sources from which this is pulled in. Uh, Similarly, another query I tried, what are the top company use cases? What are the characteristic of each use case? So reps use it for coaching and understanding how other team members are positioning the offering. And then
Yeah.
the leadership and other folks use it for what is actually going on in the calls themselves. What are
Mm,
the different parts? Now, I can give it a prompt to help it build a business case for me. And it
mm,
actually generates a pretty neat business case. And you could even specify the format in which the business case needs to be generated. I could I could put in a workflow here so that every time there is a new conversation with the customer,
mm,
input from that conversation goes back into the CRM. This is another major use case. So
mm.
you could take that information, you could push that into the CRM directly.
Yeah.
So if I go here and I could fill up information like band or authority or tech stack or competition. Like you think of a field in your CRM and it can get filled automatically. And that
Okay.
applies for text stack, competition, like things which are not your typical paragraph text. It's
Mm.
much more of numbers or dates or pick list or multi-select, and Sybil can fill that up automatically.
Yeah.
So
Is the calls that have happened the primary source of all these insights, or is there other types of information that you're pulling in and aggregating and making sense of?
yeah, so it's three sources right now. So calls, emails, and CRM input. So whatever is
Okay.
already available in the CRM.
Hmm.
We are very soon adding Slack to the mix and then adding internal conversation because that's also where a lot of rich data is captured. So, a sales rep with their manager will typically discuss a lot of deep insights about the deal itself. So, that's
Yeah.
something we want to add that as an input to the conversation.
Got it. So those are internal calls or internal conversations through Slack, or both?
Both, both.
Okay. Got it. And anything else you want to show on the demo, or?
There's a lot to explore, but in the interest of time, I will stop here.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so let's switch that off and get back into conversation mode. So that's awesome. So what? How does the customer perceive or see value from your product? I mean, what are the key measures of success when you go get deployed?
So there are two specific areas which we are focusing on today. One is deal execution, and
Mm.
second is deal enablement.
Okay.
Both of them are pretty important from a revenue that a rep is able to, or number of deals that a rep is able to close.
Okay.
Within deal execution, there are two aspects that we look at. One is the fact on how productive the rep can be, how
Okay.
many hours can we save for the rep, and uh, how many number of parallel deals can they execute without missing on actual action items? The
Okay.
second piece is how fast can the deal move? Because
Okay.
typically, if a reply comes to the ref from the customer, they will take 24 to 48 hours to get back to them. If they have to get back with internal teams, then it's longer cycle. So how quickly can you get that number down? And if the output is concise and it contains all the information, then the overall time for the customer to respond is reduced. On the deal enablement side, it's typically how effectively can you handle the objection and customer queries, which eventually leads to win rates for the deal. So these
Okay.
are the three specific pointers on which we measure our performance. And eventually all of that boils up to, okay, can I get a rep to close 150%, 200%, and then eventually 300% of the revenue that they close today?
Got it. Now, as you know, right, the whole sales tech space, there's a lot of other technologies and tools kind of
Mhm.
fall broadly into this category.
Yeah.
Um, would you mind maybe just highlighting for all of us what are some of the other uh, piece of technology players, whatever comes into, gets into conversations around this type of assistance for AEs, and how do you all kind of compare, contrast, or differentiate? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. One of the things that I have seen in the market is there are these different tooling, and a lot of the times the tooling is very siloed. So they will enable one aspect of an AE's day in life, and they actually sometimes are increasing the number of things that the rep has to care about. So today, if you look at sales tooling for an account executive, and if I leave the prospecting use case out of it, there are about 8 different tools or categories of tools that
Okay.
exist in an AE's life. And
I
within
see.
each category, there is sometimes one, sometimes there are two tools that they have to engage or integrate with. So first is your customer communication. So that's email, video, Slack. So that's where conversation tooling comes. Then you have calendar management, which is Calendly, HubSpot, those kind of tools. CRM, which is
Mm.
another important aspect. Then you have your content management systems. So Seismic, HighSpot. Some people also dub it as more enablement focused tools, but they're essentially holding company level presentations and company level data in
Yep.
order to be captured in. Fifth one is conversational intelligence, which is Gong and Chorus were the forerunners of this domain. And then now we have a lot of tools in the specific area.
Mm.
The sixth one is enablement, so Outreach, Salesloft,
Yep.
uh, Apollo to some extent. Then we have data providers like ZoomInfo, again Apollo, LinkedIn comes in the data provider layer. And the last one, which I believe is a full segment itself, is more the financial side of the reporting, the analysis of like I want to send an order form or I want a DocuSign. So closing contracts. Now,
Got it.
these 8 specific areas, specific to again the deal execution as well as the enablement cycle, can be much of these are very disparate tools. Reps are
Mm.
like moving between one or the other. It sometimes feel like it's not possible to switch off even one line on these 8, and
Mm.
that creates a lot of confusion in a rep's head. And typically, it's not even one tool within each category. If you think about data enrichment, it's 3 different tools that reps have to use. So it's LinkedIn, it's like an Apollo or a Zoom Info, and then another tool to set that up, like a Clay or like actual bring the data into a table and use it. So that siloed nature is what we are trying to reduce down
Got
to
it.
a much more concise
And
single
have you
feature.
consolidated any of them into, like, when we look at the Sybil, how would we think
Mhm.
about it? Of those 8, have you kind of knocked off 2, 3, 4? Like, where are you in your journey?
Yeah. So for a few customers, we have so one is the conversational intelligence layer. That's
Right.
where we started out as. For
Right.
a few customers, for a few reps especially, we they don't now open and use CRM for updating it as a stack. The company has a CRM, it maintains the CRM, but the UI for the CRM is actually Sybil from a rep standpoint. So the
Interesting.
reps don't need to get into a CRM layer.
Got it.
Uh, Another tooling which we are working on is the uh, content management systems. So the
Yep.
Seismic, the HighSpot, the enablement side. That
Hmm.
data layer is again, if I already have access to that as Sybil, I can customize that pitch, that deck, or that one pager with this new customers info, and the
Hmm.
reps do not need to ever use that existing info because
It's
that's all
so
they're doing. They're
familiar.
downloading the PEC, they're
Got it.
personalizing that deck to the specific customer and then sending it out.
Yep.
Uh, Very soon with calendar and scheduling invitation, the calendaring tools for the deal execution cycle to some extent would be taken away from the reps plate because that itself will become okay. If I want to schedule a meeting, you don't have to send me calendar links or send me times one by one. Hey, are you available at Monday? Sybil can do it for you because already has the context from the conversation. We discussed we're going to meet 2 weeks out. Here is a time 2 weeks out that works.
Awesome. Okay, so that sounds good. Let's talk about AI more generally. And What do you see happening in your category? I mean, there is all this buzz around, right? Real world use cases of AI, practical uses of
Yeah.
AI, where AI is actually
And,
working, and then there's a hype, right? There's a hype versus the reality. Can you piece
yeah.
that out
And
for
AI
us a little bit?
replacing humans on the
Yeah,
side.
it's just too much, right? Craziness going on, and then also about agents, and I think people are confused about uh, what AI really is, what it can do, and then versus you know um, uh, all that people are talking about, which maybe who knows how long out. But yeah, go ahead, Gorish.
Yeah. Mm, it's a very broad topic. Uh,
Mm,
People are seeing early use cases of AI. And what I believe is happening is people are trying to tackle various different problems from multiple angles.
mm,
And hence, we are seeing all kinds of solution. Horizontal AI systems, vertical AI systems to improve certain aspects of a workflow of an individual or knowledge worker. We also have AI to replace the knowledge worker entirely.
mm,
I personally believe the way to look at what eventually can and will work uh, is if we can understand how the future of a domain looks like and what that
mm,
future will build, then the tooling around that future scenario would be the way to go. So let me explain what I mean by that. For sales, I believe sales itself, the actual process of selling is fundamentally human and
mm,
it requires relationship. It requires someone to put in the trust. You will not allot an AI to buy a $250,000 or $1 million contract because right now people's jobs depends on making sure a buying, a procurement, and a uh, implementation cycle goes right. So you
yep.
need humans which will trust other humans in order
Mm,
to do that job. So
right.
the job of an AE will be human at its fundamental core. What we believe then, the next step is can I automate everything around that AE?
Mm,
So almost like provide a jetpack to the AE. So this is what I call like the co-pilot model for
mm,
an AI system. There are scenarios where you don't need a human at the center, where an AI at the center would actually be good enough as to achieve the final outcome. These are customer success use cases in many cases, support, uh,
yeah.
STR as well to some extent, uh, accounting, collections. Those should be thought of as an autopilot model. Like there are
Right.
companies trying to help these domains, assist the humans in this domain, but it's better to build for an automation of these domains as opposed to assistance. So these are the AI autopilots, companies like AISTR, even though like they're not there, but that's what they should be going for. The
Mhm,
third segment is human assisted services, which is you have a very deep knowledge, verticalized knowledge about that domain. So finance, legal, healthcare, but you cannot, and that knowledge, you need a human to finally deliver that knowledge, but you can have a huge AI background improving the OpEx of that business. So
mm,
it's like I using AI, I can provide the same services that you would get from a human partner, but at 50% of the cost.
right.
And that's a very powerful services, AI assisted services. And that model has also been taking up a lot in the recent times.
Okay, that's a very insightful answer there, Gorish, because I think you kind of summed it up pretty well. Um, and you, in some ways, I think you kind of confirmed that what we're doing kind of makes sense at Kwanzaa. As just to touch on that, we are focused on aggregating buying signals, but both person level, company level, on and off B2, websites, both B2B and B2B2C, and then we're helping with the automation of the outbound messages. So we're trying to help the
Mm,
company reduce their needs for lots and lots of SDRs doing traditional manual work. And as to your point, I think you still need folks doing the GTM
mm,
engineering, growth and demand leaders who can make sure the messages going outbound are all making sense, the touches make sense, on and on. But I think that this is a great point about AI and where it's coming into play. Are you seeing, um, and of course, there's the companies that predate, right, this whole AI revolution. You've got, people who've been around and selling SaaS solutions. And then are you seeing them also, of course, becoming AI powered? And, there's the AI first, AI native versus the AI powered. How do you see that distinction? Or is there one?
The, there's everything from being a AI on top of the existing systems to being AI native and the
Right.
entire gamut in between for a lot of the existing companies out there,
Yeah.
uh, and new, in fact, as well.
Right.
Uh, I think in some cases, what ends up happening, and this is true to some extent for conversational intelligence as well,
Hmm.
is the fundamental system is architected in a way which is not a very effective system for an AI to be
Okay.
able to work on.
Right.
So that the companies that are in that sort of state are much more significantly hampered because other companies, both new and old, are coming in and they are able to implement AI much faster into their product stack.
Got it.
And that initial architecture, which was defined in many cases 5, 10, 15 years ago, is like could be very efficient for a non-AI world, but for the AI world, this architecture is does not make a beautiful sense. Like one example of this is if you have various kinds of databases, so conversations, emails, and those are all housed separately.
Hmm.
But when an AI looks into it should not be looking into full conversation stack of an individual kind of conversation. It should be looking at different kinds of conversation in context with each other, which context, for example, in the sales scenario is your deal. So
Hmm.
in a deal, you have both calls and emails and Slack messages and phone conversations and CRM. And that's a very unique way to architect the system.
Hmm.
Whereas if you look at Slack, calls is this table and emails is this table and Slack
Makes sense.
conversation is this table. AI is not able to effectively use.
Fair enough. And when you say deal, I'm just confirming, in traditional CRM speak, we're talking of an active opportunity, right? That
Yeah.
rep is looking at. Okay, fair enough. Let's keep going because next question I want to ask you was about just talk about your tech in general. Um, there's all this pricing, packaging that's been evolving with right, the AI coming in. People talk about changing from platform pricing to per user pricing to now getting into usage based and outcome based. Where do
Yeah.
you all fall in that spectrum with Sybil?
Yeah. I love this topic because one, we are actively in process for it. Two, I have been advocating for outcome-based pricing for so long, and it's
Got it.
just has been very hard to implement because the buyers, the way they think about pricing, they want predictability.
Hmm.
And outcome-based pricing means you can forecast accurately on what a buyer's uh, revenue outcomes, state of the company would be at any point of time. And that depends on a lot of other factors other than the specific area in which you operate, which for us is sales, but for someone else can be operations or product or engineering. Uh,
Hmm.
to answer the question, for us, we have been at a user-based pricing because that's how the industry was shaped around. With the advent of agentic flow into our system
Hmm.
and the Sybil being able to take actions on behalf of the reps, we are now moving more into the domain of usage-based pricing or action-based pricing, which
Hmm.
is output. And I believe over time we will make the transition to an outcome-based pricing, which is, hey, can I generate additional X amount of dollars for you?
Hmm.
And can I then be uh, can I then be receive a percentage of that additional
A piece of
dollars that I
that.
was able to generate?
Right.
Uh, but we are already seeing a lot of companies transition from an input or number of users to an output-based pricing.
Hmm.
And usage is interesting as a
Hmm.
concept. Sometimes people define usage under the input terms, which is how many credits did I use.
Yeah.
Other times effectively people will define it as an output terms, which is how many emails was I able to send, which I had to send otherwise. So in our case, it's actions that we do.
Right.
Uh, but the eventual goal for AI tech companies, I believe, especially ones which are more in the uh, autopilot, the AI assisted services should be to get to outcome because that's where you unlock the real dollars. That's how you compare. Okay, this was the state of the world before I bought in my product or solution or whatever it is, and this is the state of the world after and to do. Now, the challenge with outcome is attribution and predictability are two of the hardest things for an outcome-based pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, whether they're business leaders, right, revenue leaders, as well as folks on that they have to deal with on the finance team, they all struggle with at the end of the day, as you said, how to budget for it, how to tie it back to revenue attribution, because you'll have five different vendors all saying, hey, it's because of me. So um, it's interesting because we went through something similar. So we also pretty much say, hey, you can have the platform, we're not going to charge for it, no platform fee, no per user fee, we charge per lead, website warm lead we generate, or a engaged account, or a offsite intent lead, or a and now, as we start building these signal-based segments, we're trying to come up with some active segment notion of, again, that's something of value. Whatever is of value, as you said,
Yep.
you're trying to assign some value to something, to the credits or what have you. Let's go to the
Another,
next question, which is, in the customer environment, what are you finding are some of your typical integrations and connections into other pieces of the tech stack you need to connect to deliver value to the customer?
yeah, the way we look at it is threefold. So first is the data sources for us.
Yeah.
So which is like where do customer conversations about the customers happen? So that is, as I explained, calls, emails, Slack, CRM, phone calls, could be LinkedIn, could be website activity because that's another customer conversation or data about the customer, and so on and so forth. Then the second layer for us is the action layer, which is what do the reps eventually need to take action into. So that, for example, is CRM, which is where they would be inputting, but instead of that, now Sybil can input emails, Slack. They need to ask their team for certain updates or roadmap, or if they can give this specific discount. So Sybil can go in and ask those instead. It would be payment gateways or order form generation software. So invoicing softwares like Stripe. You can have other. HubSpot has its own. Uh, it could also be softwares where product related actions need to be taken or where certain collaterals need to be created. Those are typically a separate set of softwares which people are using in order to create those collaterals. So there's this entire range of action software. And then third is more the UI layer
Right.
of which are used for asking questions and answers and used for asking certain kind of information from the team. And that's the third layer. So this includes in older scenarios, this would include CRMs. It would include tools like Guru, which is the knowledge database, like I have to access information from that tool. Today we have Glean, which serves a similar purpose to ask that question. Slack's UI, which I would typically go in and I would ask, hey, can you give me the deck that I used for this previous call or someone else used for this previous call? So that's a UI layer for the reps to interact with the underlying system. And those are the three that we integrate and bring into Similar. We are working on
Got it. So
bringing into
let
Similar.
me confirm a few things real quick. So you will, so people can use their traditional meeting tools like a Zoom or Teams, and you integrate with those, right? Pick up all the convos from there. The mindset I see in a lot of organizations is, okay, my reps are only going to be using CRM, and they will be going to be, quote, living in the CRM. And I think looks like Slack is becoming the other point that reps are okay to be in, or engage
Mhm.
in. Um, are there certain tools in your view will continue to be the, call it, the primary points of interaction for reps? And then are you guys playing, are you guys plugging into those, or how are you thinking about the user experience for the rep? And And people also talk about reps being always busy and using maybe their mobile phones, and you know are you looking at any other kind of interaction models, be it on the mobile, like an app, or like a you know
Yeah,
engaging with voice? And yeah, what are your thoughts on some of those inputs, user inputs for reps?
I think the demographic for the reps is not apt for a voice-based input in
Okay,
today's time frame. Maybe 10 years from now, we will have a
understood.
different answer to that.
Mhm.
In terms of how I look at various tools is CRM will continue to exist, but the purpose of a CRM will shift away. Right now, if you look at Salesforce, it solves two purposes. One is to house the data, which is to house the input integrations and the output integrations to the
Yeah.
system. And then is as a UI layer, a reporting layer, and analysis layer on top, however weak that layer is. I believe those two functions will be separated out. So the data warehousing job will continue to remain, and that could be Salesforce. In my opinion, it could also be something like a Snowflake,
Mm,
and that people will need
mm,
essentially to control. But
right.
the UI layer will be converted into a more AI first UI layer.
Mm,
And that is the aspect which we want to take over. I know other companies are working on that to become that UI layer. Salesforce itself wants to become that UI layer for
mm.
the reps. But that's the distinction that will come. And similar such distinctions can be made with other tooling as well.
Yeah, actually, that's a very interesting point, right? Because there's going to be a bunch of companies, let's call it battling for that UI layer
Yep,
for the rep. I'm sure the sales engagement platforms have a similar objective,
agree.
be the sales outreach or someone else. Um, then, one of the fundamental issues with a lot of the CRMs, from what I understand, is the lack of time series data, right? What
Mhm.
happened now, what happened last week, last month, and how are things changing over time? Not being able to look at reporting in terms of trend graphs and that kind of analytics, which is where I think external to CRM, you have tools like the Snowflakes and the CDPs of the world come in. How do you see that shifting, evolving? And I'm sure in terms of AI, you can leverage a lot of that kind of data if it's available. Correct?
Uh, I don't believe that AI today is smart enough to do that time series level analysis.
Right.
That is much more of a deeper data science problem. And there
Yeah.
are many challenges when it comes to analyzing that kind of data. Uh, I do believe it will get better in the future.
Yeah.
And at that point, we will have chances of being able to analyze this level of
Yeah.
in-depth time series regression analysis much more effectively.
Got it. So we have about 8 minutes left. So I want to, in the interest of time, right? Let's talk about the next thing. Now it's not about civil, but this is about your own go-to-market. What are you all doing in terms of getting out into the market, reaching your prospects, reaching your customers,
Yeah.
turning them into pipeline and revenue? Yeah, what's working for you all in 2025?
Yeah, so we have been pretty day one. We have been rep first. That was one of the key differentiators when we started out because we have all of these sales tech tool and technology that's focusing much more on the leadership and providing direct value to the leadership. But we believe enabling the reps is very critical. So as a result of that, a GTM motion has been heavily defined by this aspect. So we are PLG first, which means an individual rep could come in, start using the tool and get bottoms up adoption across their team and their company, and then we level up to do a sales led motion with the organization. But the
Mhm.
first point of impact is typically the rep or the frontline sales manager, which is how they get introduced to the tool. uh,
Okay.
what has been and what has been working well for us is like across the 750 customers,
Mm.
65% of the customers come directly from a word of mouth or a referral led revenue. It's
Amazing.
absolutely, which is like we will have reps who are on the platform, and then 2 days later, they have told their team members, they've told their managers, they've told their parents who are
Yeah.
or sometimes also in sales, they've also told their spouses who are in sales. So it has gone to a point where so we had our oldest customer had 4 people leave the company, went to new companies, and in the same month bought Sybil in that new company. And
Nice.
that's like the best way to grow as well. It's also the fastest way for us. So
Mm.
that has been the biggest channel of growth to date. More recently, we have also started focusing on content marketing, especially using social and LinkedIn as a channel in
Yeah.
order to build a reach, because that's where sellers are supposed to be living at
Mm.
outside of the Zoom calls, and they do spend a decent bit of time on LinkedIn. So we want to make sure we capture that channel, and we are continuously on top of mind for a significant number of the reps in that community. Uh, Given our PLG motion, we don't do many events per
Mm.
se. We don't do at least in-person events. That's much more of a sales-led motion. We are trying out few other things in terms of uh, paid social and user-generated content. That's another area because we have a mass of customers that we can leverage that love the product, that we can leverage to help generate more content, which can be seen by other folks. So we created this wall of love, which have like testimonials from 300 people and on how they are using Civil Invite, they are finding value, and that itself, that single page itself, has gotten us significant amount of new traction to the product.
Amazing, amazing. Glad to hear. So now, let's a couple of questions as we wrap. So one is,
Mhm.
how do you see how do you see the world changing? Just look ahead the next 6, 12, 24 months. Um, how do you see AI changing go to market, at least in your area, for individual reps and their managers?
What I see is vertical agents are becoming very powerful, especially with some of the reasoning capabilities that LLMs are now able to generate. So
Mm.
even AI stack that used to be siloed 18 months back is now getting much more integrated between each other. So you have this vertical agent that are able to define, okay, what are the series of steps I need to take, and then actively take each of the series of steps in order to reach a final outcome. And that will continue in different domains and different shapes and sizes across different problems that we are facing. And I think that's the biggest shift that's happening. So not just so now it's not simply a very small subset of a task that the AI can complete. It actually is the entire task, and it might even be multiple tasks clubbed together that the AI can take away from the human. So a lot of the science stuff. So, for example, like hard coded, non abstract steps can be taken away by the technology, whereas the areas where you need innovation, creativity, uh, thought into how to do the things are where humans would be more focused on. And humans need to be able to use AI to do the science while they focus on the art. And that's a very uh, that's not easy to get to that state of mind. The other thing which I'm very concerned about is the talent gap that's coming up in the early stages of career for different uh, fields. So sellers, we are seeing junior or early stage jobs and STRs are getting eliminated very quickly.
Yes.
I see that in software development as well. And so
Mm.
we have this big gap that is building on getting these early stage folks trained to be advanced towards the mid market and to the senior folks.
Right.
And I see a lot of opportunity in being able to train and reskill these people and how to use AI, because this otherwise will become a much more bigger social problem than we can imagine in the next 5 years.
That's a great point, Gorish. I think that I think itself warrants its own 45 minutes just to talk about a couple
Yeah.
of things you brought up there. I mean, I'm really really intrigued by what you said about um, what's going to happen with all kind of call it agent centric micro apps or tasks or micro agents and even heterogeneous agents, right? But they're being built by different developers, different companies, different vendors. And then you, of course, there's a lot of buzz around MCP, market, model context protocols, and Google just announced another protocol for connecting all these agents so they talk to each other properly, right? And then even directories of agents, and so that the whole world of like the agentic world is a whole different world, right? People are talking about.
Yep.
Um, let's talk about customers. So if somebody is listening here and they are new to AI for go to market, you know, and they haven't done much, uh, where should they get started? How should they get started? And that's our wrap up question.
Yeah. So, if you're new to agentic AI, if you're new to AI, one of the simplest ways can be you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. My handle is simply linkedin.com/in/Gorish. We can have a chat. We can figure out if deal execution is a challenge that you're facing. I can showcase Sybil, but if there are other aspects like prospecting or enablement or uh, other parts of the sales stack like revenue operations, I can point you to the right resources depending on the specific challenge. Happy to do that. Uh, in terms of if you're already an avid user of AI technology, then you're aware of the latest tools and tricks. But what I would recommend is keep trying out new stuff because the underlying tech is changing so quickly and the incumbents are moving much, much slower than upstart. And like these upstarts are like, we consider us one of them, but we are able to change the paradigm of operation many times over. It's not a 10-20% jump, but a 10x jump that we are able to bring. So try it out. You don't have to implement it. A lot of the new tech, it's makes it very easy to try this.
Got it. So with that, folks, here is Gorish's LinkedIn email, and you also can reach me on LinkedIn or email us. Um, we conclude this episode of AI GTM Talks, and hopefully you all found it useful. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now, Gorish.
Thanks, Mani. It was great chatting.
Thank you. Bye bye.